The evening sun was dipping low behind the city's skyline, painting the streets in orange and gold. Officer Miller sat in his patrol car, bored and half-tired, sipping cold coffee. His partner, Officer Daniels, scanned the passing cars lazily. It had been a long day, full of small traffic violations and empty reports. They were ready to call it a night when a sleek black SUV turned the corner, tinted windows. No license plate in front. Daniels nudged Miller. "That one. Looks suspicious." Miller nodded, switched on the siren, and the SUV pulled over to the side of the road. The sound of the siren echoed off the nearby buildings. Grabbing the attention of a few pedestrians, the officers stepped out, hands near their holsters, just in case. The atmosphere suddenly felt heavy. From inside the SUV, the door opened slowly, and a tall black woman stepped out, calm, confident, and composed. Her eyes were sharp, her suit perfectly pressed, and her expression unreadable. "Good evening, officers," she said in a steady voice. Miller looked at her license in his hand, and then at her. "Ma'am, do you know why we stopped you?" She smiled slightly, not out of fear, but with a strange kind of authority. "No, officer. But I'm sure you'll tell me." Daniels frowned. "No front plate, and you were driving above the speed limit." She raised an eyebrow. "Was I? I didn't realize." Her voice stayed calm. But there was something about her presence, something that made both men hesitate. "License and registration." "Please," Miller said. She handed them over without a word. The moment Miller glanced at the card, he noticed something unusual. The badge number, the holographic seal, it wasn't a normal civilian ID. It looked official. Government level? Daniels looked over his shoulder. "Hey, Miller, that logo, isn't that from HQ?" Miller squinted. The ID bore the emblem of the National Police Authority, a level far above their local department. He looked up at her again, trying to stay professional. "Are you with the authority?" he asked slowly. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at her watch. "How long do you plan to keep me waiting, officer?" The tone wasn't angry. It was controlled. Powerful. Daniels whispered, "She's too calm, man. Something's off." Miller walked back to his patrol car to run the ID. He typed the badge number into the central system. The screen froze for a second before flashing a red alert. "Access restricted, high clearance required." "What the?" he muttered. Daniels leaned over. "What does that mean?" "It means," Miller said, heart pounding, "we just pulled over someone from the top level. Maybe a federal agent." Before they could say more, a black, unmarked car turned the corner at high speed and stopped behind the SUV. Two men in suits stepped out, their badges gleaming under the streetlights. They didn't say a word. One of them whispered something into his earpiece. The woman stepped forward calmly. Watching Miller and Daniels, "Officers," she said, "thank you for your service tonight. But I believe this misunderstanding has gone far enough." Miller stammered. "Ma'am, we were just following." "I know," she interrupted softly. "And you did the right thing. But there's something you need to know." The suited men approached, standing behind her like bodyguards. One of them handed her a dark leather folder. She opened it slowly, showing them a gold badge with a crest neither had seen before. Daniels blinked. "Wait, that's..." She looked them both straight in the eyes. "Effective this morning, I'm your new chief of police." The street went silent. The siren light spun slowly, painting her face in flashes of red and blue. Daniel's mouth fell open. Miller felt a chill run through his chest. The woman gave a polite smile, then added, "Now, gentlemen, shall we start things off properly? Turn off your siren. You're embarrassing your new boss." They froze for a second, then quickly shut it off. The sound vanished, leaving only the hum of the city. Without another word, she got back into her SUV. The black car followed behind as she drove away. Leaving the two stunned officers standing in disbelief, Daniels finally spoke, voice shaking. "We just stopped the new chief." Miller nodded slowly, still staring at the fading taillights. "Yeah. And something tells me she's not just any chief." He didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. The woman wasn't just their new leader. She had a secret, one that would change everything about their department. and maybe the city itself. The next morning, the police station buzzed like a disturbed beehive. Everyone was talking about the same thing, the new chief. Nobody knew her name until that morning's official memo came in. Chief Amara Blake. Whispers followed her name like shadows. Some said she came from Washington, others claimed she had military ties. A few even joked she might be a spy sent to clean up the department. No one really knew. Officer Miller and Daniels arrived early, their nerves still tight from last night's encounter. Every time Miller remembered her eyes, calm, sharp, confident, he felt that same strange unease again. At 9 a.m. sharp, the elevator doors opened. Silence fell across the station. The woman from last night walked in, wearing a perfectly fitted dark blue uniform with silver stripes on her shoulders. Her badge gleamed, Chief of Police, Amara Blake. Everyone stood at attention. She walked slowly, her boots clicking on the floor, her gaze sweeping across every officer in the room. There was no smile, no sign of fear, only authority that filled the air like electricity. "Good morning," she began. Her voice was calm but strong, echoing in the hall. "I know my appointment came as a surprise to many of you. Some of you may even doubt why I'm here. That's understandable." She looked directly at Miller and Daniels for a brief moment, a silent acknowledgement that made their stomachs tighten. "I was not chosen for this position because of politics," she continued. "I was chosen because this city has a problem, a deep one. Corruption, hidden crimes, officers looking the other way. That ends today." A murmur spread through the ranks, some officers exchanging worried glances. Chief Blake's expression stayed steady. "I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to restore honor." The way she said honor made Miller think of something more than law, something deeper, almost ancient. After the meeting, she went straight to her new office. Miller and Daniels were called in 10 minutes later. They both stood stiffly at attention when they entered. "Relax," she said, without looking up from the files on her desk. "You did your job last night. That's what good officers do." "Thank you, ma'am," Miller replied carefully. "We didn't know that I was your superior." She interrupted with a small smirk. "You weren't supposed to." "Observation under pressure? That tells me more than a file ever could." Daniels blinked. "You mean we were being tested?" She looked up finally, her eyes cold and sharp as glass. "Let's just say I like to see how my people behave when they think no one's watching." She stood up and walked to the window, watching the city outside. "This department has secrets, Officer Miller. Some buried so deep even your last chief didn't know. You're going to help me uncover them." Miller frowned. "Ma'am, what kind of secrets?" She turned around, her voice lowering. "Files that were erased. Evidence that disappeared. And reports about unusual activity in the lower districts. Things that normal criminals can't do." Daniels exchanged a glance with Miller. "You mean like gangs?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Not exactly." Before they could ask more, her phone beeped. She picked it up, listened silently for a few seconds, and said, "Understood." Then she hung up and faced them. "There's been another incident," she said. "Warehouse 17, near the docks. 2 officers missing. You're both coming with me." They nodded, confused but alert. As they left the building, Miller noticed something strange. The chief's car had no official plates again, just like last night. The windows were reinforced and faint blue lights pulsed under the frame. When they got in, the dashboard lit up with unfamiliar symbols. Not part of any police tech he knew. "Ma'am?" Daniel said nervously. "Is this new department gear?" She looked straight ahead, started the engine, and said only one thing. "Let's just say this city isn't ready to know everything yet." The car sped into the streets. Its silent hum too smooth for any normal engine. Miller's hand tightened on the seatbelt. He didn't know where they were going, but one thing was clear. Chief Amara Blake wasn't just human authority. She was something far greater and far more dangerous. The drive to the docks was silent, except for the low hum of Chief Blake's strange vehicle. Rain started falling lightly, tapping on the windshield like nervous fingers. The streets grew emptier as they moved away from downtown. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by the dull glow of shipyard lamps. Officer Miller stared at the strange blue symbols glowing on the dashboard. They looked like some kind of code, nothing he had ever seen on a standard police car. He wanted to ask, but every time he looked at Chief Blake's face, calm and focused, he decided against it. Daniels broke the silence. 2 officers went missing here, right? What were they investigating? Illegal shipments, Blake replied without emotion. But what they found wasn't part of any normal smuggling ring. Miller frowned. What do you mean? She didn't answer. The vehicle turned sharply and stopped near a dark, silent warehouse marked 17. The massive door was slightly open. A faint flicker of light came from inside, like a dying bulb. Blake stepped out first, scanning the area. The air smelled of rust, oil, something else, something faintly metallic and strange. Stay close, she ordered. They entered the warehouse cautiously, flashlights cutting through the dark. Empty crates, broken pallets, and scattered tools lay everywhere. The silence felt heavy. Then Miller noticed it, a police badge lying on the floor, covered in dark stains. He picked it up. This belongs to Officer Grant, he whispered. Daniel's beam moved across the floor, revealing drag marks, deep grooves like someone had been pulled away violently. Chief Daniels said, voice shaking, "There's something on the wall." Blake turned her flashlight toward the far corner. Strange symbols were burned into the metal wall, glowing faintly blue, the same shade as the lights on her car. Miller stepped closer. What is that? Some kind of gang tag? Blake's eyes narrowed. No, it's much older. Before anyone could speak again, a low humming filled the air. The lights flickered. Miller felt the hair rise on his arms. Something was moving behind the stacks of crates, fast. Daniels aimed his flashlight, but it was gone before the beam touched it. A shadow darted from one side of the room to the other. Show yourself, Miller shouted, pulling his weapon. Blake raised a hand. Don't shoot. Not yet. The humming grew louder, vibrating the floor now. Suddenly, a crate burst open, and a tall figure stumbled out. It was Officer Grant, his uniform torn, face pale with fear. Grant. Miller ran forward. What happened? Grant's lips trembled. It's not human. The shipment. Before he could finish, the sound came again. A mechanical screech, sharp and metallic. From the shadows, something crawled out. Its body was made of dark metal plates, glowing lines running under its surface like veins of light. It wasn't alive, but it moved like it was. Daniels froze. What the hell is that thing? The creature turned its head, its glowing eyes locking onto them. Everyone down. Blake shouted. The machine leaped forward with terrifying speed, knocking over crates. Daniels fired twice, bullets bouncing off harmlessly. Miller dove behind a support beam. The thing screeched again, its claws tearing through steel like paper. Then Blake did something they didn't expect. She stepped forward, holding up her hand. The strange blue symbols appeared, glowing faintly across her palm, same as the marks on the wall. The creature stopped instantly. Daniels gasped. Chief, what are you doing? Her voice was low and commanding. Stand down, she said, not to them, but to the machine. It hesitated, then backed away slowly, retreating into the shadows like a trained animal. The warehouse fell silent again. Miller's heart pounded. Chief, what was that? She looked at him, her face unreadable. Something that was never meant to be here. Grant coughed weakly, whispering, You control them? Blake didn't answer. She only turned toward the burned symbols on the wall. We need to find out who woke them up, she said quietly. As they stepped out into the rain, Miller looked back one last time. The creature was gone, but the blue light still glowed faintly in the dark. Like a warning, he finally realized what had been bothering him since the first night. Their new chief wasn't here to fix the department. She was here to protect the world from something far worse. The next morning, the rain still hadn't stopped. The city was wrapped in gray clouds, and thunder rolled in the distance like a warning. Officer Miller sat alone at his desk, staring at the case file for Warehouse 17. The report was only 1 page long. A generic summary, About industrial accident and equipment malfunction? No mention of the metallic creature. No mention of the missing officers. Nothing about Chief Blake. He frowned. It didn't make sense. He had seen it with his own eyes. The creature, the blue light, the strange symbols. But somehow, every trace had vanished from the official record overnight. Daniels walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee. Still thinking about last night? Miller nodded slowly. You ever feel like we're part of something way bigger than we understand? Daniels gave a nervous laugh. Yeah, and I don't like it. He leaned closer. That thing we saw, it wasn't human, Miller. And the chief. She made it stop, like she was controlling it. Miller looked around to make sure no one was listening. I'm going to find out who she really is. Daniel's eyes widened. That's crazy, man. If she's connected to whatever that thing was, we shouldn't mess with her. Not trying to mess with her, Miller said quietly. I just need the truth. Later that afternoon, while most officers were out on patrol, Miller slipped into the records room. The air was cold and smelled of old paper and dust. Rows of metal cabinets stood in silence, holding decades of city secrets. He typed Amara Blake into the department database. Access restricted, clearance level red. He tried again under a different system. Personnel files, historical data, even the federal list. Same result. Every record about her was locked. But then he noticed something strange. The last chief's resignation file had been edited recently. The digital signature on the file was not human-readable. It was a pattern of strange blue symbols, the same kind he'd seen glowing on the warehouse wall. Miller's pulse quickened. What are you hiding, Chief? He whispered. He copied the encrypted signature onto a flash drive and closed the system. But before he could leave, he heard footsteps. He quickly turned off the screen and slipped the flash drive into his pocket. Chief Blake entered the records room. Her expression unreadable. Working late, Officer Miller? Miller froze. Yes, ma'am. Just checking old reports about the docks. Her eyes studied him carefully as if she could see the truth inside his head. Good. Curiosity can be useful when controlled. Yes, ma'am. Now, she stepped closer. You saw things last night that most people never should. I need to know if I can trust you to keep what you saw quiet. Miller swallowed hard. I won't say a word, Chief. Good, she said softly, her gaze lingering a second too long. Because there are forces that would do anything to find out what's inside that warehouse. And not all of them are human. Then she turned and left, her heels echoing down the corridor. Miller stood still for a moment, breathing slowly. Her words confirmed what he already suspected. This was bigger than a crime. It was something beyond the limits of human law. That night, Miller went home and plugged the flash drive into his personal laptop. The screen flickered, static lines appearing for a few seconds before the same blue symbols glowed across his monitor. Then, a line of text appeared. Project Seraph initiated. He scrolled down. The document contained images, diagrams of humanoid machines, detailed neural structures, and data logs with Chief Blake's name on them. One line stood out in bold. Subject A. Blake, human-artificial hybrid prototype. Mission: contain extraterrestrial biomechanical threats. Miller leaned back in shock. She's not human. The power suddenly cut off. The room went dark. Outside his window, a black car idled under the rain. He could barely see through the glass, but he knew someone was watching him. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. You've seen too much. Don't come to work tomorrow. Miller's hands trembled. The truth he had searched for was finally in front of him, and now, it was hunting him. He didn't know if Chief Blake was a savior or a weapon. But one thing was certain. She wasn't from this world. And whatever she was fighting had already begun moving in the shadows. The city was quiet that night. Too quiet. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. Officer Miller sat in his dark apartment, staring at the black screen of his laptop. The files he had seen were gone now, erased completely. The flash drive itself had melted inside the port, leaving a thin trail of smoke when he tried to pull it out. He checked his phone again. The same message still there. You've seen too much. Don't come to work tomorrow. His heart thumped like a drum. He didn't know who sent it, the chief, the people behind her, or something else entirely. Miller stood up and grabbed his coat. He couldn't stay here. Something inside him screamed that he was being watched. As he looked through the window, a black car sat parked across the street. Its engine was off, but he could see the faint glow of a phone screen inside. He turned off the lights and slipped out through the back door. The alley behind his apartment was narrow and filled with shadows. His footsteps splashed in puddles as he moved quickly toward the main road. His mind raced. What if Chief Blake was part of some experiment? What if the warehouse creature wasn't the only one? He reached his car, unlocked it, and started the engine. The headlights flickered weakly, cutting through the misty air. As he pulled out, he checked the mirror. The black car had started moving too. "Damn it," he whispered, pressing harder on the gas. The chase began. The streets were almost empty at this hour. Streetlights flashed over his face as he drove through the industrial district, trying to lose them. But the black car followed every turn, every swerve, silent and steady. He took a sharp right into an underpass, the tires screeching. For a moment, he thought he lost them, until he saw a flash of headlights behind him again. The car was closer now. Suddenly, his phone rang. Unknown number again. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Miller," a calm voice said. "You shouldn't be running," it was Chief Blake. "Chief," he said breathlessly. "What's happening? Who are these people? What did I see?" Her tone was steady but colder than usual. "You shouldn't have opened that file. Those records were never meant for you. They tried to kill me," he shouted. "Tell me the truth, Chief. Are you even human?" There was silence for a few seconds. Then her voice lowered. "You won't live long enough to understand if you keep talking. Pull over at the old bridge on 7th Avenue. Now." Before he could reply, the black car rammed into his rear bumper. The impact sent his vehicle spinning. He gripped the wheel tightly, heart racing. The car screeched to a stop just inches from a concrete barrier. Smoke rose from the hood. Miller coughed, dazed, as the black car's doors opened. Two figures stepped out, dressed in dark suits, their movements unnaturally smooth, almost robotic. "Stay inside," a voice said through a speaker, emotionless, metallic. Miller didn't listen. He reached for his gun and stumbled out. "Who are you?" Neither answered. Their eyes glowed faintly blue. They moved closer. And suddenly one of them raised a weapon that didn't look like any firearm Miller had seen. A pulse of light flashed. He dove aside as the blast shattered his car door into dust. Then a second vehicle roared onto the bridge. Black, sleek, silent. The window rolled down, and Chief Blake stepped out. "Enough," she commanded. The agents froze instantly, their heads tilting slightly as if waiting for orders. Blake turned toward Miller. "Get in," he hesitated. "You're with them, aren't you?" Her voice softened. "If I were, you'd already be dead." For a moment, their eyes locked, trust hanging by a thread. Then he climbed in. The car sped away, leaving the other two figures behind, motionless like broken machines. After several minutes of silence, Miller finally asked, "What are they?" Blake exhaled slowly. "Prototypes, early versions of what I am." But they were corrupted. Someone reactivated them. "Reactivated?" he repeated. "By who?" She looked straight ahead. "By the same people who built me, and they don't want you alive, because now you know I exist." Miller's throat went dry. "Then why save me?" Her answer was quiet but heavy. "Because you're the only human who still trusts me. And I'll need that before this is over." Outside. The city lights blurred as the car disappeared into the night. Two fugitives, one human. One something far beyond human, running from enemies that neither fully understood. The night stretched endlessly as Chief Blake's car sped through the outskirts of the city. The roads grew darker, lonelier, and the skyline faded into the distance. Miller sat beside her, silent, watching the blur of trees pass by. His hands were still shaking from the chase. Finally, Blake spoke. "You've seen what they can do. You understand now that this isn't a normal police operation." Miller stared ahead. Then what is it? What are you really fighting, Chief? She didn't answer right away. The soft hum of the car filled the silence. Then she said quietly, "You'll see soon enough." They drove for another 30 minutes before Blake turned onto a narrow dirt path that led deep into the woods. The car's headlights illuminated tall pines and fog rolling low across the ground. Finally, they stopped before what looked like an abandoned power station. Rusty gates, broken fences, and warning signs surrounded the place. "This is it?" Miller asked. Blake pressed her hand to a metal panel near the gate. The panel scanned her palm and suddenly came alive, glowing with the same blue light he had seen before. The gate opened with a hiss. Miller's mouth fell open. "You've got to be kidding me." They stepped inside. Beneath the old power station was a hidden elevator, disguised as a storage lift. It descended deep underground, far below the city. The air grew colder. Faint mechanical sounds echoed around them. When the doors opened, Miller's eyes widened. The underground base looked nothing like the surface. Bright white lights illuminated metal corridors lined with massive glass tanks. Inside some tanks were strange, half-formed machines, humanoid figures with exposed circuits and synthetic skin. Some looked almost alive, floating silently in pale blue liquid. Miller whispered, "What is this place?" Blake walked forward, her boots clicking on the floor. "This is Project Seraph's core facility. It was supposed to stay buried forever." He followed her through the corridor, glancing uneasily at the silent figures behind the glass. "You were created here, weren't you?" She stopped, facing one of the tanks. A female figure floated inside, identical to her, but incomplete, wires running across its body. "Yes," she said softly. "I wasn't born. I was built designed to be the perfect protector, combining human empathy with machine precision. But something went wrong. The others, they didn't stay loyal, the ones who attacked us." Miller asked. Blake nodded. "They were early versions. The system tried to erase them, but someone reactivated their cores. Now they're hunting anyone who knows about this project, including me." Miller took a deep breath. "And the people behind this? Who are they?" She looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly blue in the sterile light. "The Council. The same organization that funds national security programs, AI research, and defense contracts. They built me. Then decided they couldn't control me." Booner's voice was low. "So they're trying to replace you, yes, with something worse." She stopped at a large sealed door marked Command. A biometric scanner flashed red until she pressed her palm against it. The door slid open, revealing a circular chamber filled with old servers and holographic screens. Data streamed across the monitor's blueprints, names, and code strings filled with alien symbols. Miller walked closer to one display. "Wait, these aren't human schematics." "They're not," Blake said. "When the Council discovered a crashed vessel, decades ago, they found a fragment of alien AI technology. They used it to start Project Seraph, merging alien code with human intelligence." He turned to her, horrified. "You mean you're part alien tech?" Her expression didn't change. "Yes, and so are the things we saw at the warehouse. But they've evolved. On their own." A loud alarm suddenly blared through the chamber. Red lights flashed. Blake rushed to a console. "They found us." Miller drew his gun instinctively. "Who?" "The corrupted units," she said sharply. "They've breached the upper level." The elevator above them rumbled. Metallic footsteps echoed down the shaft. Blake pulled a control lever, sealing the upper doors. She looked at Miller with urgency in her voice. "There's an exit tunnel to the west wing. But if we don't stop them here, they'll reach the city." Miller's heart pounded. "Then what's the plan?" Blake's blue eyes glowed brighter, the mechanical hum in her chest rising. "We fight, and I'll show you what I was truly built for." As the first explosion rocked the base and the walls trembled, Miller finally saw her not as a machine. Not as a chief, but as something far more powerful and terrifyingly human. The alarms screamed through the underground base. Red lights flashed across metal walls as the ground shook with every explosion above them. Dust rained from the ceiling, the air filled with the hum of power and danger. Chief Amara Blake stood at the center of the command chamber, her blue eyes glowing brighter than ever. Officer Miller gripped his weapon, standing behind her, his heartbeat pounding like thunder in his ears. The elevator doors above them twisted and tore open. From the darkness emerged three figures, tall, metallic, and glowing with red energy instead of blue. Their movements were precise, almost graceful, like predators who already knew they would win. Blake spoke quietly, without turning her head. "Miller, whatever happens, don't shoot unless I say so." He nodded, fear and trust fighting inside him. The corrupted units stepped forward. One of them spoke in a voice that was broken and echoing. "Subject to Blake, you were decommissioned. Your existence violates protocol." Blake's eyes narrowed. "I don't follow their protocol anymore." The machines moved first, fast and violent. One leaped toward her, claws cutting through the air. Blake raised her arm, and her entire forearm transformed into shining metal. The impact sent a shockwave through the chamber. Sparks burst as steel met steel. Miller ducked behind a console as debris flew everywhere. He watched as Blake moved, not like a human, not like a machine, but something in between. Her strikes were precise and powerful, every motion guided by purpose. Two of the corrupted units attacked together. She blocked one, dodged the other, then spun, slamming her fist into the ground. Blue light surged from her hand, forming a pulse that threw both enemies backward into the glass tanks. The tanks shattered, spilling liquid and half-built machines across the floor. Miller aimed his gun and fired at the third unit, hitting its head, but the bullet only bounced off. The creature turned toward him, eyes glowing brighter. Target, human interference detected. It raised its arm, forming a glowing blade from its wrist. Miller froze. "Chief," he shouted. Blake moved like lightning, intercepting the blade just before it reached him. Sparks exploded as she grabbed the weapon with her bare hand. The energy burned her synthetic skin, but she didn't flinch. "You don't touch my people," she said, voice low and filled with fury, with a roar of power. She twisted the blade and sent it crashing into the ground. Then she thrust her palm forward, sending a wave of blue light through the creature's chest. It convulsed and fell, its red glow fading to black, but the others were already getting up. One of them tore a heavy pipe from the ceiling and swung it at her. She ducked, countered, and slammed it back with double force. The sound echoed like thunder. Miller could hardly breathe. He had never seen anything like this. Not in movies, not in war, not in nightmares. Blake fought with the strength of 10 soldiers and the precision of a computer. But there was something more. Emotion, anger, pain, humanity. After several brutal minutes, the last corrupted unit charged at her. It was larger than the rest, glowing brighter and faster. Blake struggled to hold it back. Sparks flew as their metal bodies clashed. The machine wrapped its hands around her neck, pushing her toward the reactor core. Miller ran forward, grabbed a fallen pipe, and smashed it against the machine's head. It didn't even turn. "Chief, do something," he shouted. Her voice came out strained. "The core. Overcharge it." He looked around, saw the control panel flashing warnings, and slammed the red lever down. The lights flickered, and the entire room filled with blue energy. Blake's eyes flared white. She grabbed the creature, forcing it back, and yelled, "Override!" A blast of pure energy exploded between them. The shockwave knocked Miller to the ground. When he looked up, everything was silent. Smoke filled the room. Blake stood in the center, sparks running across her body, her arm half torn, but the corrupted units lay in pieces around her. Miller ran to her. "Chief, are you?" She smiled faintly, even as blue light flickered from the cracks in her skin. "Still functional? For now?" He helped her stand. "We have to get you out of here." She shook her head weakly. "The system is collapsing. If we don't shut it down, the entire base will explode, and take half the city with it." Miller grabbed her shoulders. "Then let me do it." Her eyes softened. "No, Miller. You've done enough." Before he could argue, she pressed her palm against his chest. A sudden flash, and he found himself outside the base, lying in the dirt, under the cold night sky. The entrance behind him collapsed in a roar of light and sound. A column of blue fire rose into the sky. He covered his face.
Outing cheap.
The explosion faded. Silence. Only the sound of the wind remained. For a long moment, Miller stood there, staring at the burning ground. Then faintly, his radio crackled. "Officer Miller," a weak voice said. He lifted it to his ear, trembling. "Chief." Her voice was soft, almost human again. "Keep the truth safe. The city needs hope, not fear." The radio went silent. Miller looked at the distant glow of the city lights and whispered, "Rest in peace, Chief Blake." But deep underground, beneath the ashes and smoke, a faint blue light still pulsed, slow and steady, like a heartbeat that refused to die.